Hello and welcome to this video. So we are going to learn about completing the square method of solving quadratic equations. So we have been looking at factorization method, and the factorization method has got some limitations. There are equations that it is difficult to solve using factorization method, and this is where now we bring in another method that is completing the square method. For example, let's look at this. Let's say we have x squared minus 4x minus 10 is equal to 0. Let's try to solve it using factorization method. So as we said, we need the sum and the product. So we said the sum is represented by the coefficient of x, okay? So the sum is -4 and the product is -10. So let's try to figure out which are these two numbers that if you add them you get -4, if you multiply them you get -10. So if we take the factors of 10, that is 1 and 10, 2 and 5. So you see there's no way we can have 1 and 10 and give us a sum of -4, and the same case for 2 and 5. So you see it becomes difficult to use the factorization method in this case. So we are going to use a method that is known as completing the square method. So what does this method entail? So this method entails making this equation to become a perfect square. And what do we mean by a perfect square? Okay, don't worry, you're going to understand all this by the end of this video. So when we talk about a perfect square, okay, let me have an example here. Let's say x plus 2 squared. What is x plus 2 squared? Okay, x plus 2 squared means x plus 2, x plus 2. So when we expand this, we're going to have x plus 2, and then plus 2, x plus 2. So this is x squared plus 2x plus 2x plus 4. So this is x squared plus 4x plus 4. So this is now a perfect square. It is the square of x plus 2. Okay? Then let's also look at another one. We can also have x squared plus 12x plus 9. Okay, sorry, 4x squared. Let's use this. 4x squared plus 12x plus 9. So this is a perfect square. It is how do we know it's a perfect square? It is a perfect square because it is the square of 2x plus 3. So 2x plus 3 squared is this one. So this is a perfect square. Okay? So there's something that I want us to realize about a perfect square. So, and that is a very important relationship that we're going to use in this method of completing the square method. So let's take a look at this perfect square. That is x squared plus 4x plus 4. Now, we said that the coefficient of x, we can abbreviate it as a, the coefficient of x squared, and then the coefficient of x, we can abbreviate it as b, and this constant here, we can call it c. So this relationship is that if we divide b, or the coefficient of x, by 2, and then we square it, we are supposed to get the product of a and c. We are supposed to get a times c. So let's see whether it's true for this perfect square. So b is 4, and then we divide it by 2, and then we square it. what do we get? 4 divided by 2 is 2. 2 squared is 4. What about A times C? 1 times 4. Is it 4? It's 4. So you can see that relationship holds for that perfect square. Let's look at this other one here. So we have said that B, so we have A, this is A, okay, 4 is A, and then 12 is B, and then 9 is C. So B divided by 2, and then we square it, we are supposed to get A times C. So B is 12, we divide it by 2, and then we square it, we are supposed to get A times C. So let's see whether it's true. B is 12, 12 divided by 2 is 6, 6 squared is 36. Then, what about 4 times 9, that is A times C, it is 36. So you can see that relationship holds, okay? And we are going to use it in this method. Okay, so let me clear some space. Okay. Okay. Oh, unfortunately, I have cleared even the title. Okay. So we have said that B out of 2 squared is supposed to be AC. So that is an important relationship that we are going to use in this method. So how do we make now this a perfect square? So the first thing that we are going to do is to bring this constant to this other side, this negative 10. I want us to bring it to this other side. And how do we bring it to the other side? We are going to add 10 to both sides, okay? So it's going to be x squared minus 4x is equal to 10. So you can see I have left some space here. There's some space here. Okay? There's some space there. So this space means that there's something missing. So okay, we have A there, then negative 4 is B, and then we need a plus C. Okay? We need a plus C there. And what we are going to do is to make this left-hand side of the equation become a perfect square. And how do we make it a perfect square? We are going to use this relationship that we have just found out here. That B, which is, for this case, it's negative 4. If we divide it by 2, and then we square it, okay, we are supposed to get A times C. So for this case, A is 1, okay? The coefficient of x squared is 1. So it's supposed to be a C, okay? So let's work that out. So negative 4 divided by 2 is negative 2. Negative 2 squared is 4. So the value of C is 4. So if I rewrite this equation, it's going to be x squared minus 4x plus 4 is equal to 10. But then this equation is not balanced, okay, if I may say so. It's not balanced because we have added a 4 to one side. So, okay, before adding a 4, this side is equal to this other side. If we add a 4, it's no longer equal to this other side. So what does that mean? To make this equation balanced, we need to add a 4 to even this other side, okay? We add a 4 to this side and also to this other side. So that the new equation becomes x squared minus 4x plus 4 is equal to 14. Okay? So, the next thing that we do is that we are going to factor the left-hand side of this equation. And how do we factor this side of this equation? Now, we are going to use factorization method, but I will also show you a very simple technique that will help you save time when you are factoring a perfect square, because this this is a perfect square already. Okay, the left hand side is a perfect square already. So we can use factorization method, but I will also show you another simple technique that will save you a lot of time. So if we use factorization method to factor this side, okay, we're going to have the sum is -4 and the product is 4. So which are these two numbers that if you add them you get you get -4, and when you multiply them you get 4. Which are these two numbers? So if we take the factors of 4, we have 1 and 4, we have 2 and 2. Okay, so if we take -2 and -2, so -2 plus -2 is -4, and then -2 times -2 is 4. So those are the two numbers, and then we are going to have x minus 2 and x minus 2, okay, which we can also write as x minus 2 squared. So we have factorized it. Now so we are going to have on the left hand side of the equation is going to be x minus 2 squared is equal to 14. Now I want us to get the square root of both sides so that we can get rid of this square. Okay, I want us to get rid of this square, and the way to do that is to get the square root of both sides, so that we're going to have x minus 2, so the square and the square root cancels one another, and we're left with x minus 2 is equal to the root of 14. And the root of 14 can be either positive or negative. Okay, so the root of 14 is either positive or negative 3.74. Okay, so we can have x minus 2 is equal to positive 3.74, or x minus 2 is equal to negative 3.74. Okay, so x here can be, so x is equal to, so we can add 2 to both sides. Okay, so that x is 5.74. okay, and then for this other one we can also add 2 to both sides, and x for this one is going to be a negative 1.74. so x can be that and x can also be that. So we have solved for this quadratic equation using the completing the square method. Okay, so I want us to quickly get to another example. So let's have x squared minus 2x minus 15. Okay, so I know is equal to 0. So I know one can also use factorization method to solve for this one, because you can easily get the sum and you can easily get the numbers that have a sum of -2 and a product of -15. But I want us to use the completing the square method, and then we can now compare it with the factorization method and see that they still give us the same answer. So as we said, the first thing is to move this -15 to this other side. So to do that, we need to add 15 to both sides. Okay, so it's going to be x squared minus 2x is equal to, let me leave some space here. Okay, sorry, is equal to 15. Okay, so as we said, this is A, and then this is B, and then we need a plus C here. Okay, and we said that B divided by 2 squared should give us AC. So for this case, B is negative 2. Negative 2 divided by 2, and then we square, we should get A times C, and A is 1, so we should get C. So by 2 it's 1, by 2 it's negative 1. So negative 1 squared is 1. So C is 1. Okay, so if I rewrite this equation, it's going to be x squared minus 2x plus 1 is equal to 16, sorry, not 16, but 15. But as I told you, since we have added 1 to this side, we need also to add 1 to this other side so that the equation remains balanced. Okay, so it should be, instead of having 15, it should be 16. Let me just write 16 there. 16. And then we now need to factorize the the left hand side. So I had promised you to show you a technique, a simple technique of factoring a perfect square without having to go through the factorization method. And the way to do so, so definitely when we factor, we should get something like this. Okay, squared is equal to 16. So we take this first term here and this last term, and then we find the square root separately. So x squared, the square root is x, and then 1, the square root of 1 is 1. Okay, and then the sign that we put here is the sign in between x squared and 2x. This sign, for this case, it's a negative. Okay, so if it were a positive, we would write a positive. For example, if it were x squared plus 4x plus 4, that is also a perfect square. So when we are factoring, we write it that way. We get the square root of x squared, get the square root of 4, okay, and then we take this sign in between x squared and 4x, okay, that way. So that is just a simple technique of saving you time when you're factoring a perfect square. And remember, this only applies to a perfect square. If it is not a perfect square, please don't use that technique. Okay, so from there we need to eliminate this square here, and the way to do so is to get the square root of both sides. So the square and the square root cancels out, and we are left with x minus 1 is equal to the square root of 16. The square root of 16 can be either positive or negative 4. Okay, so that means x minus 1 can be equal to plus 4, or x minus 1 can be equal to negative 4. So let's find the value of x when we have positive 4. So we need to add 1 on both sides so that x becomes 5 for that case. And then for this one, plus 1 plus 1. So x becomes negative 3. So the value of x is negative 5 or negative 3. I want us to use, so we have found the values for x using the completing the square method. I want us to quickly use the factorization method just to prove that we shall get the same thing. In fact, let me write it up here. Where was it? Okay, here. So let me use a different color. Okay, so the sum, this is the equation. The sum is negative 2, and then the product is negative 15. So which are these two numbers that when you add them you get 2, when you multiply them you get so negative 2 and negative 15. So which are these two numbers? So these two numbers are negative 5 and 3. Okay, when you add them, negative 5 plus 3, you get negative 2. When you multiply them, negative 5 times 3, you get negative 15. So we can have x minus 5 and x plus 3. Okay, then this is equal to 0. Okay, so this one will be x plus 5 is equal to 0. Oh, sorry, not plus 5 but minus 5. Minus 5. X minus 5 is equal to 0, or x plus 3 is equal to 0. So x minus 5 is equal to 0, so we can add 5 to both sides so that x becomes 5, and then for this one we can subtract 3 on both sides so that x becomes negative 3. So you see that we have found similar answers, and that is what we call the method of completing the square. Okay, it's a very reliable method. It cannot fail you. It's not like the factorization method whereby it can fail you sometimes. Sometimes you can get numbers where you cannot get the sum and the product of those two numbers. So this is a very reliable method. So thank you so much guys for watching. Let's meet in the next video. So if you find this video helpful, please consider subscribing to this channel and turning on the notification bell so that you don't miss on any video that I upload.